I think by now everyone knows the look. Red cape, blue tights, the big S on the chest. It's one of the most iconic superhero costumes ever created. Even if you've never read a comic book before, you probably know who it belongs to.
Superman! 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 Superman!
That's how deeply this look is embedded in pop culture. It practically defines what we imagine when we hear the word superhero. But here's the thing. This legendary suit, well, it didn't just fall out of the sky. It's been tweaked, reworked, stripped down, armored up, rebooted, and yes, occasionally electrified. Over nearly a century of comics, Superman's costume has evolved right alongside him, reflecting the changing eras, the shifting art styles, and more than a few bold editorial swings. Hi, I'm Indy and welcome to my channel. In this video, we're diving deep into Superman's suit, from the strongman-inspired threads of 1938 to the high-collared armor of the New 52. The red trunks, the boots, the cape, the S-shield, all of it. This is the anatomy of Superman's costume. Let's get into it. In 1938, when Superman debuted in Action Comics #1, his look was straight out of the Circus Strongman playbook. Tight, bold, and built to show off the goods. Joe Shuster's original art gave him a clean, muscular silhouette with minimal detail, partly because the printing tech at the time couldn't handle much complexity. The blue of the suit was often light and uneven depending on the page, giving it a kind of textured, denim-like appearance. Then came the Silver Age. Enter Curt Swan's Superman. Suddenly, the blue wasn't just there. It popped. It was vibrant, consistent, and polished. The suit got slicker, the S-shield more refined, and the overall design started to feel definitive. This was Superman becoming myth. In the Bronze Age, the changes were more subtle, less reinvention and more refinement. The colors became a touch more muted and the proportions got a little more grounded. Then came the big reboot. In 1985, DC launched Crisis on Infinite Earths, resetting the entire DC universe. A year later, Superman was relaunched in the 1986 miniseries The Man of Steel, written and drawn by John Byrne. This post-crisis Superman still wore the classic suit, lovingly sewn by Martha Kent. But it looked tougher. The blue was deeper, the reds richer, and the cape had a weightier, more regal drape. The chest emblem got bigger, bolder, and fully commanded the torso. It was still Superman, just updated for a more modern era. For a lot of late Gen Xers and millennials, this is the version of the suit that comes to mind. And for nearly 3 decades, it stuck around. Then 2011, the New 52. This was a swing. The New 52 was DC's bold attempt to reboot their entire superhero lineup from the ground up. And for Superman, it meant one of the most dramatic costume changes since they electrified him in the 90s.
We'll come back to that later.
The red trunks were gone. In their place, a sleek, segmented Kryptonian battlesuit designed by Jim Lee. High collar, angular seams, and a modern, armored aesthetic. The redesign wasn't just for looks, it came with in-universe logic. The suit was now Kryptonian armor that responded to Superman's physiology, tying him more directly to his alien heritage and making him feel like a product of advanced technology, not just a guy in spandex. But fans were divided. Some appreciated the updated look. Others missed the charm, simplicity, and iconic silhouette of the original. Critics pointed out that Superman, a character who's invulnerable, probably doesn't need armor. Also, where were the trunks? By 2016, DC seemed to admit something had been missing. With Rebirth, they brought back the heart of classic Superman: the optimism, the warmth, the marriage, the kid. But not quite the full costume. The trunks were still missing, though the suit itself was cleaner and simpler. Then came the Superman Reborn arc, where DC merged the New 52 and pre-Flashpoint versions of the character. The costume was refined again. Finally, in Action Comics number 1000 in 2018, the big anniversary issue, the red trunks made their triumphant return. Not just for nostalgia, but because, let's be honest, the design just works better that way. Now, let's get to the boots. They might not be the flashiest part of Superman's costume, but they've got a quiet history of their own. In Action Comics number 1, Superman's boots weren't the sleek, smooth ones we know today. On the cover, they had strap-like detailing, almost like gladiator sandals, a nod to circus strongmen and pulp heroes. But if you flip to the interior pages, suddenly, the boots are blue. A total mismatch. This is most likely just a coloring inconsistency, pretty common in early comics when color separations were more guesswork than science. By Action Comics number 6, the boots had settled into the classic red look, simple, mid-calf, and featuring the distinctive M-shaped notch on the front. It's become part of Superman's visual language even today. You see it, and your brain instantly goes, "Yup, that's Superman." Here's a fun oddity. Some prints showed Superman's boots with a yellow M-shaped notch. Whether it was a coloring error, a printing choice, or just someone getting creative, we don't know. But it's a fun bit of trivia, and for decades after, the boots barely changed. They stayed red, smooth, and iconic. The New 52 gave them an armored upgrade and removed the M notch, but artists generally kept them recognizable. This is because Superman's boots aren't just footwear. They're the bottom point of that red, blue, yellow triangle that makes the costume work. Take them away or change them too much, and the whole thing feels off. Finally, the cape. The big red flag of hope trailing behind Superman as he soars through the sky. In the static visual language of comics, the cape is a powerful storytelling tool. It conveys motion, energy, and grace, giving artists a way to suggest flight, momentum, or tension, even in a still image. With Superman, that flowing fabric does a lot of visual heavy lifting. And like the rest of his costume, it has its own history, quirks, and symbolic weight. When Superman debuted in Action Comics number 1, the cape was just that, a red cloth with no symbol. Around 1940, things started to change. On the cover of Action Comics number 22, we see the first big evolution, a yellow S shield on the cape. Often credited to artist Paul Cassidy, this little emblem became part of Superman's visual identity, though consistency was still iffy. In the Golden Age, the cape emblem would change from red on yellow to blue on yellow, or just disappear entirely depending on the artist or the page. By the Silver Age, DC started locking things in. The S shield became more standardized, typically a yellow shield with S. It showed up reliably across books, including Action Comics number 233, where it even became a plot point. In that story, Superman visits a fictional totalitarian country called Borgonia, where the dictator Torm has made it mandatory for all citizens to wear Superman costumes under penalty of death. Why? Well, because he's trying to catch the real Superman. But the government-issued suits have one key difference. The S-shield on the cape is red on yellow. Superman's real cape, however, has a yellow S on a yellow background. And that's how Torm's agents were able to spot the real deal. It's a strange but fascinating moment where costume detail literally becomes a matter of life and death. In the post-crisis era, John Byrne's 1986 reboot gave Superman a more grounded look, but the yellow S-shield on the cape stayed. It was bold, simple, and, in Superman's own words, exactly the symbolic statement he wanted. Then came the New 52 in 2011. The cape changed again, with the S turning black on red to match the more armored look of the costume. It also now sported a pointed bottom. Love it or hate it, it was a distinctive choice. And once DC launched Rebirth in 2016, the classic yellow S-shield returned. A visual way of saying, we're back to basics. But the cape isn't just about aesthetics. Depending on the era, it's been made from Kryptonian blankets, which are nearly indestructible under a yellow sun, or simple earth fabric, depending on how grounded the story wants to be. It has had some curious properties across the years, too. In Action Comics number 559, Superman uses his cape like a massive tarp to catch magical grime turned into rain. It stretches to cover an entire town. Just comic book physics doing its thing. And sometimes the cape has pockets. In Superman number 701, Clark literally pulls money out of his cape. And in Action Comics number 252, it's shown that he folds and stores his Clark Kent clothes in a secret pouch sewn into the cape. It's more than fabric. It's been a symbol, a shield, a blanket, a visual flourish. And when that red cape flutters behind him with that yellow S shining in the sun, you know exactly who's about to save the day. Before we move on, let's talk about one more thing. The toughness of the suit. Depending on the era, Superman's costume is either just very durable or basically indestructible. In the Silver Age, the suit was portrayed as nearly as invulnerable as Superman himself. In Superman number 112, it's described as being indestructible as time itself. In Superman number 146, we learned that the costume was made from the multicolored baby blankets found in Kal-El's rocket ship. When Martha Kent tries to destroy them, nothing works. Not scissors, not fire, not even a shotgun blast. The only way to cut the material is with Clark's own heat vision, which she uses to tailor the suit. That said, even the best material has its limits. Under a red sun, like Krypton's, Superman loses his powers, and so does the suit. In Action Comics number 329, a Kryptonian sword is able to pierce his costume, reinforcing that Kryptonian materials can bypass its durability. Post-Crisis, the origin changes. In John Byrne's The Man of Steel, the suit is made from earth fabrics. The reason it survives fights is because of Superman's bioelectric aura, a subtle energy field that extends just far enough to protect close-fitting clothing. This is why the bodysuit often stays intact while the cape, which flaps freely, is the first to get shredded in a fight. But this aura isn't limitless, or at least that's the theory. One widely accepted explanation for why Superman's costume took visible damage during his infamous battle with Doomsday in Superman number 75 is that the prolonged brutal fight pushed his aura to the breaking point. Ripped sleeves, torn cape, the whole 9 yards. It's never been officially confirmed, but it's a plausible in-universe reason fans have latched onto. Then, in 2011's New 52, the costume got a tech upgrade. The suit became a reactive Kryptonian battle armor that bonded with Superman's body. As seen in Superman Volume 3, Number 7, it was more than clothing. It was alien tech tuned specifically to him, forming around him like some futuristic nanotech armor made by Tony Stark.
Nanomachine, son!
So yeah, from unbreakable baby blankets to an invisible aura to reactive alien armor, the suit has always evolved with the times. But no matter the explanation, one thing's always been true. This isn't just spandex. It's built to last. If Superman's suit is iconic, then the symbol on his chest is downright legendary. The S-Shield isn't just a centerpiece of his costume, it's one of the most recognizable symbols in the world. Zack Snyder once claimed it's the second most recognized icon globally, right after the Christian cross. Whether or not that's true, one thing's for sure. You see that shape, and you know who it represents. When Superman debuted in Action Comics #1, the S-Shield was, let's call it, experimental. It resembled a badge or a coat of arms more than a logo. Inside the comic, the emblem was even less defined, more of a yellow triangle with a faint S. It wasn't until Action Comics #7 that the shape started to resemble an actual inverted triangle with a red S, marking one of the first big steps toward what we now recognize. By 1940, in Superman #4, the shield got another overhaul. A red S on a black background with a white border. It didn't stick in the comics but lingered as a logo in the corner of Action Comics covers for years. Then, in Action Comics #26, artist Wayne Boring reshaped it into the iconic five-sided diamond we all know. The red S, yellow fill, red border. By 1944, DC wanted to trademark the logo, so Boring fine-tuned his earlier version, giving the S the signature vertical serif at the top and rounded loop at the bottom. This appeared in Superman #31 and became the standard for the rest of the Golden Age. Then came the 1980s. After Crisis on Infinite Earths, John Byrne's Man of Steel reboot modernized the shield. It got slicker, more angular, and very much a product of the 80s. Bold, large, and clean. This version became the default for years, tweaked slightly by artists over time. In 1997, things got weird. The Electric Blue Superman storyline introduced the first truly radical redesign of Superman's costume. Clark's powers shifted dramatically. Instead of solar-powered strength and flight, he became a being of pure electromagnetic energy. To contain these new powers, he wore a blue and white energy containment suit. Naturally, the S-Shield changed too. It became a sleek, stylized lightning design in white and blue, matching the aesthetics of his new form. It was stylish, it was radical, it was also controversial. He went back to the classic look a year later in Superman Forever #1. In the New 52 era, the S got sharper and more geometric to match the armored aesthetic of the suit. Then, during Rebirth in 2016, DC softened the angles, blending modern detail with a return to the classic shape. So, what does the S stand for? Well, originally, just Superman. No deeper meaning. It wasn't until 1978's Superman the movie that changed. Marlon Brando's Jor-El tells us the symbol is the crest of the House of El. Suddenly, the emblem becomes something bigger than a logo. It's a legacy. Writers loved the idea of the S having a deeper meaning. In the Kent's miniseries in 1997, John Ostrander even tied the symbol to an Iroquois healing emblem. In one issue, Jonathan Kent's ancestor, Nathaniel Kent, receives a medicinal blanket from a Native American woman. On the blanket is a symbol, a coiled snake representing healing, wholeness, and renewal, enclosed within a five-sided border that stands for the unity of the Iroquois Confederacy's 5 nations. This symbol, remarkably similar to Superman's S-Shield, becomes part of the Kent family legacy and apparently used by Jonathan Kent when helping Clark shape his heroic identity in John Byrne's Man of Steel. It's a neat bit of retconning that grounds the symbol not just in alien heritage, but in earthly values of healing and unity. In 2003's Birthright, Mark Waid took it further. The S wasn't a letter, It was a Kryptonian glyph meaning hope. Suddenly, it's not just a family crest anymore, but the embodiment of an ideal. The idea that Superman's emblem stood for something universal clicked with the fans, and DC ran with it. In the 2013 movie Man of Steel, Henry Cavill's Superman cemented it when he told Lewis,
It's not an S. On my world, it means hope.
So whether it's a name, a crest, or an ideal, the S-Shield has become more than just part of the costume. It's a beacon, a belief, a promise. It's the kind of symbol that transcends comics, and that's what makes it legendary. While Superman's traditional red and blue ensemble is iconic, there have been moments in his history where circumstances necessitated a change in attire. Over the years, Clark has suited up in a number of alternate outfits, sometimes for a storyline shakeup, sometimes for survival, and sometimes, well, because it was the 90s. Number 1. The Black Recovery Suit. Following his death at the hands of Doomsday in Superman number 75, Superman was resurrected, and in Superman the Man of Steel number 25, he returned to Metropolis wearing a sleek black suit with silver accents. This recovery suit was designed to absorb solar energy more efficiently, aiding in the restoration of his powers after his return from the Kryptonian regeneration matrix. It does not have a cape, and the S-shield on his chest was metallic and silver. Metallic gauntlets and metal toes completed the ensemble. At the time, Superman couldn't fly and had lost most of his strength, so he had to resort to rocket boots for propulsion, and, in a rare move, he even wielded energy weapons to make up for his reduced power levels. While this suit wasn't particularly flashy, the all-black look left an impact. It's been reused in other media, including Zack Snyder's Justice League, as a visual shorthand for a more serious, reborn Superman. Number 2. The Hunter-Prey Costume. In 1994, DC released the Superman Doomsday Hunter-Prey miniseries. In this, Doomsday was found to still be alive and somehow landed on Apokolips, where he started to wreak havoc. Superman, intending to finish what they started a year prior, went to Apokolips to confront his nemesis. During this time, Superman was wearing a Mother Box, a sentient portable supercomputer created by the New Gods. The Mother Box, sensing the imminent danger posed by Doomsday, altered Superman's costume into the most gloriously over-the-top 90s comic book look. The Hunter-Prey costume was peak 1990s comic book excess, a time when the heroes were decked out in pouches, armor plating, oversized weapons, and extreme redesigns. This suit was no exception. It featured pouches, bulky metallic plating, belts on boots, a high-tech sword, and an ultrasonic gun, making Superman look more like a sci-fi warrior than a classic Man of Steel. It even featured that ridiculous headgear that was so popular among superheroes in the 90s. And did I mention the pouches? Thankfully, this costume was just a one-off, but still, for one brief instance in 1994, even the Man of Steel himself was unable to defeat a creature more dangerous and powerful than Doomsday. The extreme, edgy, 90s aesthetic. Number 3. The Electric Blue Suit. In 1997, during the Power Shift storyline, Superman's powers underwent a radical transformation, turning him into a being of pure electromagnetic energy. To contain and control these new abilities, he wore a blue and white containment suit introduced in Superman number 123. Like the recovery suit, this one did not have a cape. The S-shield was stylized and took on an electric design. The suit was built by Superman's ally, Emil Hamilton, with materials donated by Luthor, and it allowed Superman to harness powers like energy projection, intangibility, and electromagnetic manipulation. However, it also meant that, as Clark Kent, he was entirely human and vulnerable. This era, often referred to as the electric blue face, would be the first time that Superman's main costume in the main continuity would be completely and radically altered. While some may look at these suits as ridiculous, they are more than just visual gimmicks. They reflect the times, the stakes, and the creative risks DC was willing to take with its most iconic character. And while none of them had the staying power of the classic red and blue, they each tell a story about Superman's legacy, adaptability, and enduring presence through comics history. At the end of the day, Superman's costume, as iconic and unchanging as it may seem, is actually a living, evolving thing. Over the decades, the suit has changed, sometimes subtly, sometimes dramatically, and sometimes with a little too much armor and not enough taste. But the core idea always sticks. The colors, the cape, the shield, they endure because they mean something. And through every reboot, redesign, and regrettable fashion choice, Superman's costume keeps reminding us who he is. A hero. The hero. If you made it this far, thank you. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into Superman's wardrobe evolution, consider giving this video a like, maybe even subscribe for more comic book lore, costume breakdowns, and the occasional dunk on 90s edgy aesthetics. Drop a comment about your favorite Superman design, or maybe the one you wish had stuck around. Until then, be good to each other, and I'll see you next time.